Hi, in this video we're going to learn how to use the combination and permutation functions within Google spreadsheets to solve probability type questions. So let's get started. Let's start with an example. If you've ever heard of a trifecta in horse racing, that's when you specify which horse you think is going to come in first place, which horse you think is going to come in second, and which horse you think is going to come in third place. So when you bet on this, you are specifying the exact spot that each horse is going to come in. This is much more difficult than guessing which horses will come in first, second, and third where the order doesn't matter. So in this case, order does matter. If you pick the right three horses, but they're in the wrong order, then you don't win. So that is an example of a permutation. A permutation is an example, or is a way to describe a probability of a certain set of instances where order makes a difference. So let's do that horse race as an example. Let's suppose there were 19 horses, and you were trying to bet on which one would win first, which one would win second, and which one would win third. So that's a permutation. We have 19 horses and we're choosing 3 of them. So how many ways are there to choose 3 horses where order makes a difference? So that is going to be called we're going to use the function permute, P-E-R-M-U-T. And right here you can see that we are finding the permutation of, out of a certain number, we're saying 19 in this case, how many possible ways there are to choose 3 of them. So that's the function permute. There are 5,814 ways to choose 3 horses where order matters. So again, in the instance where horse A, horse B, and horse C are not in that particular order, perhaps you chose horse C and then A and then B, that's a different possible outcome. So that's why there's so many. Now let's assume that order doesn't matter, where as long as you pick the first 3 horses, it doesn't matter which order they came in. That's called a combination. So that is going to be the function equals C-O-M-B-I-N. Again, there are 19 horses, and we are choosing 3 of them. So N is the number that you have to choose from, and K is how many you're choosing. So order doesn't matter in this case. So when I press enter, there are a lot less options actually. It's a lot easier to get this one right. When you bet on these 3 horses, if it doesn't matter which order they come in, then there's a lot less ways for them to come in because you don't count A, B, C, and C, A, B as different outcomes. They're the same outcome. So there's many less outcomes for combinations than permutations. Let's try another example. The next example is how many ways you can seat 5, or how many ways you can seat people at a table. So suppose you had 8 people and you're going to only seat 5 of them at a table. When you seat them at the table, you know they're all going to sit down, but the question is how many ways are there to seat all 5 of them? So is that a permutation question or a combination question? Does the order matter or does it not matter? In this case, the order you pick does matter because each person will sit at a different spot depending on the order they're chosen. So that is a permutation question where order matters. So we're going to type in here equals, again, P-E-R-M-U-T, and there are 8 people and we're choosing 5 of them, and we're trying to figure out how many ways you can seat these 5 people you picked at the table. So surprisingly, there are 6,720 ways to seat these, to pick 5 people, and so let's assume order doesn't matter and all 5 people. The question could become, how many ways are there to pick the 5 people to sit at the table, ignoring where they actually sit, just the fact that they were picked rather than specifying where they sat. So that would be a combination. So we're going to type equals COMBIN, and there are 8 people, and how many ways are there to choose 5 of them? When I press enter, in this case there are only 56 different ways to choose 5 people. So essentially what that means is there are only 56 ways for these 8 people to be grouped into 5, and order doesn't matter in that case. All right, let's try one more. The lottery is another game where the amount of possible outcomes is pretty large. Let's suppose that there are 50 numbers to choose from in a lottery. How many ways are there to choose 6 of those 50 numbers? Okay, so again, does order matter in this case? How many ways are there to choose 6 numbers? In most lotteries, it doesn't matter what order. Actually, in no lottery that I know of does order matter. It's just, you're just picking the numbers themselves, and the order in which they come out doesn't make a difference. So order does not matter in this example. So we're going to use a combination. The question again is, how many ways are there to choose 6 numbers out of 50? So we type equals COMBIN. There are 50 numbers to choose from, and we're picking 6. And there our number is, there are 15,890,700 ways to choose those 6 numbers. Now, you don't have to only use a spreadsheet program like this to solve these. Your calculator has this in function. Most scientific calculators have this function built in. So if you were to have a calculator that has the letters N, C, R written on it somewhere, or the letters N, P, R, that's another way of saying that's a choose function, the one with the C, and that's a permutation function, the one with the P. So the way you type it in your calculator, say for instance the horse race one, this horse race was a permutation, so in your calculator you would type in equals 19, then you'd press that button, NPR, and then you're choosing 3 of them. And if you did it like that, your calculator would give you the same number. And the same with the NCR. So either of these functions are available usually on most calculators. But if not, you don't have a calculator that does that, then you can use a spreadsheet program like this. Now, one more thing I'd like to show you that is quite interesting, you might want to use this in the future, is the random variable function. So if I were to go into an empty cell and type RAND, that is a function that chooses a random number between 0 and 1. So I open parenthesis and close parenthesis. It doesn't expect you to write anything in there, but since it's a function, you still have to put those parentheses. And it just chose a random number between 0 and 1. If I were to drag this down, it's kind of like dice, except it's a lot more options than 6. So it keeps choosing a random number between 0 and 1. Perhaps a more useful function would be the rand between function, and you specify the lower and upper numbers that you want to pick. So if you want to pick a number between, say, 50 and 67, it will choose a random number between those. So 52, 54, 67, 56. And so sometimes you might want to develop some kind of program where it's choosing things randomly, and this is how you would, this is one way to choose a random number. So why don't you try out some of these examples in your homework using this function capability, and thank you for listening.